Love your city, every back road, every alley, every pothole. Love your city, every back road. Come together, fight for your home.
Welcome to the Love Your City podcast. My name is Bob Dalton. In each episode, I interview people doing grassroots work in their communities. This episode, I have the opportunity to interview Alan Graham. He's the founder and the CEO of Mobile Loaves and Fishes and Community First Village, one of the initiatives under the program. Thank you for spending time with me.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Bob. Thanks.
First question I kind of want to come out the gate with is, how do you define community?
Wow. I would almost like to begin with, how do you define home? Because if you want to understand homelessness, we must understand home, and we don't. And so what immediately comes to mind is when we call or say something like home is this structure, these four walls, this roof that we all basically get to live in. But home is actually a far deeper, richer environment. And in the book, Beyond Homelessness, Christian Faith in a Culture of Displacement, published in 2008 by a couple of theologians, now friends of mine, they talk about the phenomenology of home. And within the phenomenology of home, they describe the 8 characteristics of home. So I'm going to gloss over these 8 characteristics. 1, home is a place of permanence. 2, home is a dwelling place. I love the word dwell. It just kind of rolls off your lips. And that's that place that when you cross over the threshold into your home, it's as if you liquefy to move into every nook and cranny of that space, your space. Home is a place of embodied inhabitation. When you walk into my home, you just came into my office, my home here in this building, and you see all the markings of who I am. And there's a story behind everything that is in there that represents who I am. It's the embodiment of who Alan Graham is. We have a home in Fredericksburg, about 90 miles from here, my wife and I. We live here in the village full time, but periodically we get out to Fredericksburg. And on the wall in our home is the measuring deal that we measured all of our 5 children as they were growing up. And today, when we all gather together, they always want to measure me because I have shrunk. And so there's an embodiment to that humor. Home is a place of safety and refuge. The home that my wife and I own in Westlake Hills here in Austin, Texas, for 34 years that we raised our entire family, no one had a key. There were no keys. Door was open all the time, 24/7. And we welcomed the stranger into that home. Home is a place of hospitality. You know, we brought a lot of people into our home, and it always basically began with offering food and drink. The number one connector to human, heart-to-heart through hospitality is the food. If you're married, you and your wife, first date, restaurant, probably. There's a connection there. Home is a place of stories and memories. It's often said that the mortar that holds the bricks of even the most impoverished home together are the stories and memories that flow from that home. And I've been into some third world country poverty situations that are beyond our human understanding and have met some of the happiest people that I've ever met in my life. Home is a place of orientation. And no matter where I've been in the world, and I've been in some pretty cool cat places, my compass is always oriented to Community First Village, Austin, Texas. It's an incredible place here. And then last and not least, and very important, home is a place of affiliation and belonging. You and I like to be around people like us that have shared experiences, shared values, shared political beliefs, shared religious beliefs. Most of us are in the same economic deal. And when you have battled homelessness, addictions, mental health issues, incarceration, you're better equipped to be around other people that have those shared experiences and the wisdom that actually flows out of those shared experience. And it's only in the context of home, as I have just, superficially described, that community can ever flow. So that's a long-winded answer to what people would hope would be a simple question. It's far more complex.
Well, we're here in Austin, Texas, sitting on some incredible land that you've built an entire community around. But before we dive into the community, how it works, what the purpose is, the people in it, take us back before Community First Village and Mobile Loaves and Fishes on what you were doing before that and what ultimately led you into this type of work.
In order to really go back, you have to go back to my mom. And the only memory that I have of my mother and father under the same roof together as a husband and wife was when I was, I believe, 4 years old, 1959, 1960. My mother was standing on her bed with a knife in her hands, threatening my father. That memory is embedded in my mind and forever. And then the next thing I know, my mom is in the hospital, and she was institutionalized for a year, subjected profoundly to very powerful psychotropic drugs, electric shock therapy, the whole deal. And over the course of my mother's life, she suffered multiple institutionalizations, including one where I had to, at the age of 18, institutionalize her. My father left us in that first run, went and got remarried, couldn't handle, that situation. So right away, there was a profound, catastrophic breakdown of, my family as I knew it. And that was a difficult deal for myself and my three brothers, four of us, to overcome. We were being raised basically by a single woman battling a mental health issue in the 1960s and 70s. And that collision was kind of an interesting collision. I met my wife in 1980. We started dating in very early 1981. My mother converted to Roman Catholicism very young. I kind of remember this, and started dragging me and my brothers to church. I enjoyed that part of it. But by the time we got into our early teen years, smoking pot and being a juvenile delinquent, stealing cars, stuff like that, the idea of going to church on Sunday exited my deal. But when I met my wife in 1980, 81, it was clear that if this was going to be the one, it was going to be one that would be married in the church. And so we did, and I didn't care. And then we started having children. And from there, she started going back to Mass. And I began to realize, and both of us are 7 day a week, workaholic type people. And I'm in the real estate business at this time, starting in 1978. I've got a pretty good career building by the time our children are coming on the ground. I've built a reputation here in town. And I make the decision to start going back to church with them. But if I'm going to do this, I'm going to study everything I can about my faith, my Catholic faith, my Protestant brother's faith, and anybody else's faith that I could get a hold of, and realize what an absolutely beautiful, gorgeous train wreck my Christian faith was and is. And became enamored with the schisms, the heresies, the reformations, the wars, the money, just the whole thing. You couldn't write this novel. It is so intriguing how 2,000 years later, in some of the most devastating debacles in the history of mankind, this thing still exists, and centered around the belief that God had sent his only son. And I developed a very intellectual relationship with Christ. Okay, I'm going to believe in the unbelievable. God sent his only son. The little girl was impregnated by the power of the Holy Spirit through the message of an angel. The Lord of the world was born of a virgin birth, and then later was suffered tremendous scourging, was crucified, died and buried, and descended into hell to go maybe rescue some more folks, and then came out of the abyss, hung out with his buddies for 40 days, and then under his own power ascended into heaven. This is crazy. But okay, I'm gonna buy into all that. And then I went on a men's retreat in 1996 at my church that for 30 hours, men would get up in front of other men and vomit out some extraordinary, putrid, sinful stuff. The kind of stuff that I'd want to go up to my guys and go, hey, man, you ought to keep that in the deepest, darkest recesses of your skeleton closet. We don't need to hear this, man. But then they would connect it to forgiveness, reconciliation, healing, and redemption. And by the end of this 30-hour deal, I'm going, oh my God, this is genuine. These men are genuine men. These relationships are huge in my life. It transcends talking about sports or girls or work or, the gratuitous stuff that typically. And I just began to ask God, what do you want me to do? And then one day he put on my heart, go out and feed the homeless in a catering truck. As a serial entrepreneur, in the real estate business, with a pretty successful business going on at the time, I go, we'll do a little deal like that. Never knew that it would lead to where I am today.
And was it something that you set out to do by yourself, or did you band a couple of your buddies together and try to make something of it?
No, I'm a band the buddy together guy. Finally got the courage to share this idea with my wife, who is married to a serial entrepreneur. And I have taken her up and down the roller coaster of entrepreneurialism over the course of our marriage at that time. And she just looked at me, Bob, and said, oh my God, here we go again. Because she knows I'm on point. And when I get on point, I'm on point, man.
That it wasn't just going to be about feeding some people. It's going to turn into something, most likely.
Who knew?
Yeah.
I didn't know. It was just starting at that. And then when I kind of got the pseudo go-ahead from her, okay, I'm in, whatever you want to do. I started sharing it with some buddies, and they jumped on. One of my still very best friends outside of my marriage, Bruce Agnes, first guy I shared it with, looked at me and said, I'll put $500 in that deal. And, first donor, $500. I was the second donor, $500. And then here we are nearly a quarter century later, having really built a movement.
Yeah.
In the United States.
What were some of your early observations? And did you have any biases toward the homeless?
Well, I had every bias that one could have. Dope addicts, mentally ill, lazy, choosing. I had all those things. One of the powerful things about that truck is that when it went out on the streets, those that were serving and those being served were on the same side of the serving counter, which created this intimate, one-on-one, human-to-human, heart-to-heart connection. And once you start connecting with people and they begin to share their stories, and it becomes, instead of homeless guy and, white guy from Westlake Hills, it's Bob and it's Alan, there's transformation that's going to occur. So I started getting to know these men and women out there. I'm hearing their stories. I'm praying with them, hanging out with them. 2003, I started doing sleepovers with them, going out on the street and spending the night. I've spent probably 250 plus nights on the streets since 2003 with them. And then that developed an even more intimate relationship. And I just fell in love with them and began to learn what we believe as the single greatest cause to homelessness, as a profound, catastrophic loss of family. And we've already talked about that in here. One brother in here, his father was a heroin junkie. Another brother, whose mother ended up on the streets. My mother mentally ill. My younger brother mentally ill and a dope addict. Mm-hmm. It's in all of our families. Mm-hmm. And nobody's choosing that. Nobody chooses to be a heroin junkie.
Yeah. And when you started picking up on this concept, or this, I guess, commonality of a lot of people are in this situation because of a lack of family or lack of community, when was it when you started to put together, I think we should probably start doing more than just serving food and conversations, and started working toward possibly what could, at the time, could have been a better solution?
Well, virtually every decision that I ever made in the early days was built from a philosophy of transaction. Let's go feed the homeless. Let's go hang out with the homeless on the streets. And so in 2004, I got the idea to buy a gently used recreational vehicle and lift one person up off the streets into a privately owned RV park. That was just a transaction, get the guy up off the streets. But God was equipping me in my understanding and drawing me to understand about the profound catastrophic loss of family and the profound catastrophic loss of the Forged family community within that. So that understanding wasn't, like some revelation in the beginning. It was an equipped, learned understanding over time that led to, our philosophy that has existed for at least 15 years, that the single greatest cause to homelessness is the profound catastrophic loss of family. Because there's no one listening to this podcast that doesn't have these issues inside their family. Mm-hmm. No one. If there is one, you are an anomaly. We need to study your family. Because frankly, I don't believe it. Mm. I've never run into it. Mm. No, my family, perfect. We're all got out. Yeah, no.
So when did you have the concept of, I think this would be a good idea to start buying or building RV homes or tiny homes, and started to construct the concept of creating a village?
Yeah. So the first RV, I got the idea when my buddy Bruce, one of the original co-founders with me, was looking at purchasing a ranch outside of a little town 90 miles from here, Fredericksburg. And he said, "You want to go look at this thing with me?" And I go, "Yeah, let's go." We're outdoors hunting and fishing people. We get up to this property and there's a deer camp with an RV on it. And I jump out and I go look at this RV and I look at Bruce and I go, "Bro, I could live in something like this. What do you think this would cost?" And he goes, "All day, $3,000 to $5,000. So I went and bought one. The organization did for $5,000. And immediately, because of the serial entrepreneurial nature of who I am, I began to fantasize about building an RV park. That's how this all started. And so serial entrepreneurs will take always a baby idea and blow it into a ginormous, I'm going to save the world idea. And that's just what we do. And, most of our ideas end up being flushed down the toilet, but every now and then, man, there's a nugget that sticks and turns into something. So it wasn't long after that I went and hired, I'm a real estate developer. I've been around real estate development all my adult life, but I didn't know much about RV parks. And I'm one of these guys that really recognizes my limitations. It would be one of my spiritual giftings to recognize what I'm limited at. So I went and hired a consultant, paid him a lot of money, $15,000 at the time, to educate me on the development and operations of an RV park. And then we're off to the races.
That's amazing. So take us now to the land that we're on. It's an extraordinary amount of land. How did you end up getting the land where you started to actually construct this first community? And then there's even more land that you haven't even developed yet.
So the original idea was to go to the city of Austin and partner with the city of Austin. City of Austin owns thousands of acres of land inside the city. And I met with the mayor in, I believe, 2006, late 06, maybe early 07, and made a big dog and pony presentation to him. And I said, "If you will provide us with a tract of land anywhere in the city, I don't care where it is, I just have two requirements. I need the entitlements, zoning, water, sewer, to be able to do what we want to do, and reasonable, not perfect, but reasonable access to public transportation. And if you do that, I'll go raise all the money to construct this deal." And look, he jumped on that like a duck on a June bug. In April of 08, the city granted us unanimously a long-term ground lease on 17 acres of land a couple of miles from where we are sitting right now. And then in July of 08, the sponsoring city council member and I went to a neighborhood meeting that turned into Armageddon. We were spit on, we were assaulted. Police had to be called to escort us out of this meeting. And so that unleashed, that was 08, that unleashed another 2 years of, he called a press conference the next morning to postpone executing that ground lease for a year.
Wow.
That it killed it.
I mean, what was the conflict? What was the...
Not in my backyard. People believing that there are going to be people laying in my front yard with needles sticking out of their arms, and they're going to rape and pillage and plunder my children, and my property values are going to go down, and just the typical NIMBY stuff. And so we tried on several other tracts of land, including the one that sits the professional soccer stadium today. And by 2010, I got worn out and went back to the mayor, new mayor at this time. And in the state of Texas, there's no zoning in the county of the state of Texas. So there's no discretion as to what you can put on the property in the county by a political body. I decided to come just outside the city of Austin and purchase a tract of land, which is what we've done. And that was a game changer and a brilliant strategy, it turns out.
Yeah, that's amazing. And then, so you got the land, you started bringing in the RVs and tiny homes. How did you end up funding kind of the early stages of the community?
This is funded just like almost any entrepreneurial venture is funded. You got to have angel investors. You're running around peddling your dream to somebody. You got no proof of concept. You just have an idea and you start selling that idea. We end up building a model village about 2 miles from here on 2 acres of land. We spent about $750,000 over time building that model, and that turned out to be a game changer because we could walk people around rather than try to show them on a piece of paper what this could be. And I had a number of people come in on the angel side. They kind of believed in the idea. Just like anybody, they would be suspicious of the idea. But I think they believed in my passion in a tremendous way. And I'd already been operating Mobile Loaves and Fishes for, over 10 years, 12 years now. They saw what kind of operator, and so they started throwing some money at us. And then you move from the angel investor to the venture investor. The venture investors are going to take you. Now you got the idea. You got some proof of concept. It's looking really good. Now you need another tranche of money to take it to the next level. And the venture investors jumped in over the course of time. And this takes time. And then when you get way beyond the proof of concept, like where we are right now, you get what we call the institutional philanthropic investors. And now there's no issue. People see it, believe it. We got the data that,
Let's dive in and talk about the community. What were the things that when you were constructing the community and you were kind of looking at it, dreaming it out, what were the things that you wanted to integrate into the community to make it feel and be an actual community?
Well, for those of us that have gone into RV parks, like on vacations, and my family, we were never RVers, but we were tent campers or cabin campers when my family was young. And many times that would lead us into an RV park. And we noticed that there was an inherent sense of community within these RV parks. People would come out of their small spaces, whether it was a tent, a cabin, or an RV, and gather in community, cook burgers together, go to the movie night together, go play whatever the games are, out there, together, and just have fun. It was a fun environment. The other thing I noticed one time while we were in an RV park is, about $1 million Prevost, Prevost, which is kind of the rock star giant RVs. That's, who does those, that company Prevost, would pull in. These things are a minimum of $1 million, new today. And they'd pull in next to a $12,000 Jayco bunkhouse, and the families would emerge and they'd be hanging out together, not even knowing that this one's got $1 million deal. This one's operating on $179.99 a month payment on a Jayco bunkhouse. And so let's build an RV park. Let's build an RV park that had RVs in it. Let's build an RV park that had camping cottages, and let's build an RV park that had tent camping. That's how that started. And then people started jumping on board. They would say, I really like your idea. Yes. And what if we do this? And what if I, open up a contest between all the architects to design, instead of these little camping cottages, little micro homes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what if we invite the home building industry to come in? And what if we build a outdoor movie theater in the middle of your park? And what if we build a farm in the middle of your park? And how about a bed and breakfast in the middle of a community that's going to house the crack addicts, the glue sniffers, the prostitutes, and the convicted felons? None of this made sense. But now, look what we got. It totally makes sense.
Yeah.
And
as an entrepreneur, you're just like, let's do it.
Let's go. Let's go. Let's make this happen. So I'm a yes and kind of a guy. I don't like people beating down my ideas. I've had plenty of people give me the stop sign, with their paw. I don't like stop sign people. I like people that are creative, innovative, want to help you take your idea to a different place. And that's what happened here and continues to happen.
Yeah. Well, it's a beautiful community. And when you were driving us around, giving us a tour on the golf cart today, there's a lot of things that stick out to me. And the word that comes to mind when we were kind of driving around was life. There's a lot of life to this place. It feels kind of like almost like a spiritual place. It feels peaceful and connected. When you think of this community, what is one of the things that stands out to you as something that you're really proud of?
Well, it's home. My wife and I have lived here for 5 years now. Can't imagine. We hope to be buried here. I hope to die here. One of the things, when you die indigent on the streets, your body's just going to be whisked away, given to a rotation funeral home. If no next of kin is found, you're gonna end up being buried in the pauper cemetery where the despised and outcast go to be lost and forgotten. When somebody dies here, there will be 100 people, standing outside of their house until that body is removed, praying, laughing, joking, remembering, doing all the things that you do when there's been deep loss. And then that person will ultimately be cremated and interred in a columbarium right here, and they will spend their eternity here in the middle of this property. And that is a special deal. This is an extraordinarily peaceful environment with a side salad of tension because there are humans that live here. And just like your family that might get together over Thanksgiving, brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles coming together from around the country. And
there's laughs and there's arguments.
And there could be some real doozy arguments, man. Pro-Trumpers, pro-Bideners, rolling over the couch, fighting each other, doing what families do. And that happens here.
How many people live here in the community?
I think there's 377 as of this morning.
And then what kind of qualifies somebody to be able to move into this community? What's the process of that?
Well, you have to be chronically homeless, and that's an unaccompanied male or female having lived on the streets of the Travis County for at least a year with a disability, or episodically homeless, adding up to a year over 4 years. They have to go through a process that we call the continuum of care here. They hook up with a case manager with a partner organization of ours. There's a bunch of those out there. And they end up doing what's called a coordinated assessment. They've changed the name. I can't remember the name of it right now. That gives them a ranking based upon their vulnerability. And then they have to come out here for a prospective neighbor tour. We want them to come out here, see what we have, be toured around the village, just like you were today, and talk about all the things about living here, the rules and our expectations, and then make the decision that they want to live here. And if they say yes to that, they fill out another application to live here. And once that application is complete, they actually get on our list. So it can take a while to get in.
But once they get accepted, you were telling me today that they actually get to go around and actually pick out one of the homes that's available. It's a very normal, dignifying process of selecting a home.
Yeah.
You mentioned that they pay rent.
Number one rule out here is you must pay rent. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Up until COVID, we had very little rent collection problems at all. I mean, 99% rent collection. It probably went up because the government just banned evictions for quite a long period of time. And now we're working on catching up through that. But you're not going to escape not paying your rent.
Yeah.
That's a bottom line.
Yeah. You mentioned the community rules. There's 3 of them. Can you break those down?
Rent, you got to pay rent. I believe very powerfully that you got to have skin in the game. So you pay rent. And rent is not a percentage of your income. Here's the rent on this unit. Here's the rent on that unit. Here's the rent on this unit. It's what it is. You choose this. This is what you pay. Second rule is you must obey civil law. We don't make it. We don't enforce it. But you do something that's going to cause us to call the cops. We're calling the cops. Periodically, that happens. Third rule is you're going to live in a community that has rules like your homeowners association, condo association, regarding cleanliness and picking up dog poo and behavior outside of your home, things like that.
Yeah. What's amazing is each home is kind of decorated according to its kind of their own personalities. And there's little sticks in the ground that says stay off the grass and flags hanging up. And they pretty much have full freedom to do mostly whatever they want, just like living in a normal neighborhood.
Yeah, pretty much they do. We want them to personalize their home. They can't add on to it or tear it down or do structural stuff without, typically they can't do it, period. So, but when they move in or 2 weeks prior to then, they will know 2 weeks prior to their move-in date, and we bring them back in and there will be another interview and we'll ask, what's your favorite colors? There's a form they fill out. Are there themes in your life? Like, we had a guy move in recently who Disney was his jam, and he moved in the first day and there's Disney characters. And if you're a Dallas Cowboys fan, you're going to have some Dallas Cowboys swag or Philadelphia Eagles or something like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. One of my favorite spots in the community is the Entrepreneur Center. Can you share a little bit about what the vision was for that?
Well, I've had the benefit of traveling around the world a lot, Europe, Mexico, Canada, and in almost every country you go to, when you get off the airplane, you're going to get assaulted by a gauntlet of entrepreneurs. If you go to Rome, you're sitting in a plaza drinking your cappuccino. There's people everywhere selling stuff. And if a rainstorm pops up, next thing you know, there's umbrellas and ponchos everywhere. If you go to the Colosseum on a hot day, there's going to be 400 people out there with bottles of water selling you bottles of water. I find this great. You come to the United States of America and we're inundated by beggars. What happened in this country that the most abundant country in the history of the world, where we got beggars everywhere, and you go to the poorest countries in the world, like Mexico, and you got entrepreneurs everywhere. And basically, we outlawed entrepreneurialism in our country. You can no longer sell bottles of water, newspapers, flowers, cow skulls, cow skins, and Velvet Elvis art on our street corners without, it's either illegal or the occupational licensing requirements to do it are so onerous it's prohibitive to people in poverty. And so the only remaining bastion of entrepreneurialism remaining is the First Amendment free speech right to stand there and hold a sign and beg. Okay? And so what you really are seeing on our street corners are some of the greatest entrepreneurs with a puritanical work ethic that's unparalleled. They're willing to stand out there all day long and beg you for nickels, dimes, quarters, and dollars, all for about $50 a day. It's not that easy to live on $50 a day, especially when you're battling physical health issues, mental health issues, or addiction issues. And so what we wanted to do was go and create opportunities on this property to mine that Puritan work ethic and those entrepreneurial skills. And so the art house is a place where you can create fine art if you're gifted that way, pottery, ceramics. We have a jewelry making operation where jewelry can be purchased through our markets, pop-up shows, and our online store at mlf.shop or shop.mlf.org. And then all the groundskeeping, property beautification, our farming operation, lots of different things are being done by men and women that live here that last year alone, our neighbors earned over $1.2 million in dignified income.
That's amazing. And not only can they make things here and sell them in the market that's also here in the community, are there any other job opportunities for them here on the property apart from creating or doing any entrepreneurial type stuff? Is there any other jobs?
Yeah, well, property beautification. So a lot of lawn mowing, weed eating, blowing, maintenance, housekeeping in the B&B. Our culinary, we have a culinary operation that does a lot of catering here. Plus we have 2 food trucks on site. When the movie night's going and people are here, concessions are all operated by men and women here, on the property. So yeah, wood shop. We used to have a blacksmithing shop. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
That's amazing. So when you think about the future of the community that you're building and the land that you have kind of surrounding the land that we're on right now that's undeveloped, what's the vision and your hope and your plan over the next, 3 to 5 years and beyond?
Well, we acquired another 127 acres fairly recently, 1.5 years, 2 years ago. And, we're in the site development permit process with those properties right now. We should have permits sometime this fall. And back in November, we launched a $150 million capital campaign that will build about another 1,300 to 1,400 homes, plus all the support infrastructure to support that population. So we'll go from about 550 homes where we are on phase 1 and 2 to ultimately about 1,900, give or take a few homes.
That's
so
amazing.
That's coming.
Yeah. And you mentioned to me, and I really share in this philosophy that a lot of the giving, the financial giving and the support is coming from individuals mostly, not necessarily from just corporations or government or anything like that, individuals. Why is that important to your organization?
Well, there's probably a couple of big things. Number one is understanding philanthropy and how it really works would be number one. Number two would be we believe that in these big human issues like homelessness, that government should only play a subsidiary role to you and I, we the people, the constitutional we the people, in mitigating these problems. So if you think about the foster care system, which is a ginormous feeder of people into the homelessness system, who in their right mind would ever believe that the state needs to be raising our children? We need to be raising our children. But we have abdicated that responsibility to the state. And the state provides value. Government provides value, but they're not coming into your bedroom tonight to tuck you in. So we've created a model in this country that is, frankly, on a human level, extraordinarily unsustainable. And then from a philanthropic point of view, we, the people, when you look at philanthropy in the United States, about 75% of every dollar that is given by an individual making the decision to give that dollar. About another 15% of that money is done by foundations that are privately owned family foundations where an individual a high net worth individual, made some money on a deal and loaded that money up into a family foundation in order to be able to use philanthropically. And so we believe that about 90 pennies out of every dollar given the decisions are being made by typically a single individual or a family deal, not by some kind of a committee where you apply and do all that. And we know this is fundamentally true. We also live into what we call the Pareto principle. If you don't know Pareto, you need to go Google it, study it, go further than Wikipedia, but study it. And it's basically 80% of all causes in the world happen by 20% of the action. It's the 80-20 rule. So in our case, 91% of our revenue at Mobile Loaves and Fishes for nearly 25 years has come from 9% of our donors. And so you want to understand philanthropy. The money's not coming from government. It's not coming from corporations. Corporations have a duty to return profit to their stockholders. it's almost always coming from individuals. So we made a strategy many years ago to focus our efforts on building relationships with men and women and connect them. The street that I live on right here is called Heart Over Pocket, and that kind of encapsulates our fundraising philosophy. I want your heart first. Your pocket will follow when you're ready to do it.
Yeah. It's giving everyone an opportunity to care for their own community. And I believe long term, it's more sustainable. If the collective is giving and supporting one another, that's more sustainable than relying on an individual philanthropist or a corporation or the government funding to hope, that they come and save the day when the community can step up and care for one another. I've been looking for models to kind of prove that socially sustainable concept, that where can we see people collectively caring for one another and what are the long-term effects in a positive way? It's been hard to find people groups that have done that well. And I think this is an amazing model that's demonstrating that. But I've had to look toward, studying trees and studying ant colonies and these other models that are about the community and the collective caring for one another. And therefore, it is much more sustainable long term.
Well, we live in a culture that's a fix and repair culture, Bob. We want to fix, we want to catch, fix and repair you, and then release you back into the world. So I would tell you that the common question that's ever asked out here is, how long will people live here? So it's as if we're coming in, we're dusting them off of all their disabilities, and then bam, they're living in some apartment complex somewhere, living a middle-class life with a wife, 2 kids, and a car. There's not an ant colony or anything else that you've ever studied that operates under that model, but we have created a model that doesn't work, that is not sustainable. Humans need humans. There are 2 fundamental innate qualities to you from the moment that you were conceived, and that is you desire to be fully and wholly loved. It's pretty simple. And you desire to be fully and wholly known. It makes butterflies go in your heart when people go, hey, I listened to that podcast the other day with Alan Graham at Mobile O's, and that was powerful, bro. Way to go. And you just get all giddy, on that deal. And then there are people that actually care about who you are as a human being. Your mom, your dad, your wife, your children. I have tremendous support in that area, but we're made for that. And frankly, I'm not fixing you. My wife and I have been together 41 and a half years, phenomenal relationship. There have been moments over that time where you're looking at each other and you're going, what did I do? And there are things about her that I will never, ever fix. And there are things about me that she's never going to fix. I could, metaphorically wrap $1 billion in $100 bills and cellophane on a pallet and put it in a location. And all she has to do is get there on time. And I make fun of it to go, she couldn't do it. She can't. It's just, that's not her gift. But you could ask every staff member around here what time we start meetings when I'm involved in those meetings, man. It's on the Apple Watch deal. When that thing hits the second hand of 8:30 start time, that meeting's starting. And I'll tell you this, if you come into that meeting late and you ask a question that has already been asked and answered, you're going to get barked at. We've already answered that question. You weren't here. That's what I'll do, because now you're consuming my time. So you're not fixing me of that, and I'm not fixing my wife of that. All my shirts that I wear this exact shirt every single day of the week. Not this one, but they're all lined up, oriented on exactly the same hanger, in my closet. It pleases me to do that.
Yeah.
And I agree, it's kind of weird. So I'm not going to go to therapy to go try to figure that deal out.
And in the community, your point is that in the community, there's things here that you can and can't fix, and you're going to have to figure out how to live and dwell together.
Well, let me tell you what, if you were raped by your father and your brothers and your uncles multiple times before you left home at 12 years old to live on the streets for the next 40 years of your life, you're not fixing that trauma. I highly recommend a book written and published last year by Oprah Winfrey and a neuroscientist, Dr. Bruce Perry, called What Happened to You? And I highly recommend the audiobook. It is extremely powerful and meaningful as to the work that most of us are dealing with when we're operating in the human space that we operate in. Instead of going, what's wrong with you or what did you do? It's what happened to you that has you in this place. And then we begin from there. So the level of trauma, and look, if you were on the battlefield in Vietnam, I mean, I got a buddy here that was a gunnery sergeant in the United States Marines in Vietnam. Well, let me tell you what a gunnery sergeant, in the United States Marines in Vietnam did. It was, you're not getting that out of your brain, and the things that he witnessed, gruesome trauma. We have to understand this.
Yeah. The word goodness is everywhere in the community. It's on your hat right now. One of the streets here in the community is named Goodness Way. Why is the word goodness kind of scattered throughout this community?
Well, it's actually goodness, period. So there's a period after the goodness. And, a friend of mine came up with that term many, many years ago. And serving goodness, which is our kind of saying. I don't know what you call it, but it's a trademarked saying. And but goodness is ubiquitous across all faith, cultures, and frankly, non-faith people. And our goal is to build and invite to this banquet table anybody and everybody. And although we are very faith-oriented, centered around the gospel of Jesus Christ, we want to be an extraordinary, welcoming place. So even though goodness is deeply embedded into my Christian faith as one of the 12 gifts of the Holy Spirit and mentioned a gazillion times in Scripture, it's also very fundamental to any other faith. My Jewish brothers and sisters, my Muslim brothers and sisters, Zoroastrians, Buddhists, Hindus, you name it. My atheist brothers and sisters completely believe and can wrap their arms around the idea of goodness. So we wanted to welcome everybody, and we wanted to overcome this idea that we must exclude to include, which is what we do today. And so what we want to do is have everybody at the banquet table, all centered around, a common issue like homelessness, to be able to brainstorm and work together about how we can mitigate this pandemic, as opposed to, oh, you believe in this or you believe in that, and we can't have you at you're Republican or Democrat or independent or libertarian. No, we can't. I can't hang out with you, man. No. I want everybody at the table.
You're seeking for the commonalities and the things that we all have, which you believe there's goodness in all people.
All people. Yeah. Not much I mean, there's evil in the world. But for the most part, I don't run into it.
You want to see and find the goodness.
I want to see and find the goodness.
Well, we felt very welcomed here today, and we appreciate you taking us around and showing us the community. How can people in Austin best support Community First Village and the community here? Support by financial support, or even coming and volunteering, or coming out to learn? What do you recommend?
Well, the best thing to do is just to come out here. So we do 3 public tours every week out here. They're on our website. You can register to come out on those tours. And I would just suggest registering. We do 2 during the middle of the week and 1 on Saturday, or 2 on Saturday. I'm not sure what the numbers are, but just go to our website, check it out. I highly advise doing that before you start giving or doing any of that. If you want to hit the donate button and give, that's up to you. But boy, I'd rather capture your heart first and then see where that goes.
Yeah, definitely worthwhile coming out here.
Yeah.
This community, you have the theater, the homes, the Entrepreneur Center, the garden, the memorial. It's a very special place. And just as in the early days with the prototype, the early beginnings of what you were wanting to create, and then see it to evolve into this community. I believe this community is a prototype for what communities could look like all over the world. And this is a legacy project. It is a very, very special work that you've done, and beautiful.
Well, I appreciate that, Bob. Appreciate you being here and taking the time.
Absolutely. It's our honor. And the last question for you is, why local? Why do you feel like it's important for us to take initiative on a local level?
Well, we made the decision. We actually were expanding nationally with our truck operation. And back in 2015, we decided to retract all that and cut those operations loose because I love my city. I enjoy your city, but I don't love your city. And I can't do what we have done in your city. I am not relationally connected. My embodied inhabitation is not in your city. My embodied inhabitation is right here in Austin, Texas. But the model which we share can be replicated in order to meet the needs of your community by you coming here and learning from us through our replication process, how you can take what we've learned into your community, not the playbook, the philosophy of what it means to be community first.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Love Your City podcast. If you want to find ways to get involved in your community, you can visit loveyourcity.org. If you have any questions or recommendations of grassroots leaders or nonprofits that we should be aware of, email us at media@loveyourcity.org.